The Doll People. Prologue. It had been 45 years since Annabelle Doll had last seen Auntie Sarah. And 45 years is a very long time, especially for an 8-year-old girl. The dollhouse where Annabelle lived with her family hadn't changed much over these years. True, tiny things had been added, or had been broken, or lost. A rug that had lain on the floor under the dollhouse had been taken away and never replaced. Panes of glass had fallen out of some of the windows in the dollhouse. And the wallpaper in the kitchen had been printed over, but those were small changes. The dolls themselves had remained pretty much the same. Their china skin was a bit grayer, and their clothes were a bit more frayed, but otherwise they looked almost the same as they had the day Auntie Sarah was lost. In fact, the dolls looked very much the same as they had the day they first arrived at 26 Weatherby Lane. However, they had once been a family of 8, if you included, as the dolls did, the children's nanny as a member of the family. And now they were a family of 7. Outside the dollhouse, in Kate's room and beyond, everything changed. Little girls grew up and had little girls of their own. People left the house and went to work or on vacations. History was made. Things happened. But inside the dollhouse, not much happened, as far as Annabelle was concerned. The only important event in her entire 100-year life was that Auntie Sarah had disappeared. But today, the second most important event had occurred. Annabelle had found something that had belonged to Auntie Sarah. No one knew she had found it. Not Kate Palmer, not any of the dolls. And keeping a secret in a house like Annabelle's was awfully hard. It might even be impossible. Annabelle thought, except for the fact that there was no one with whom Annabelle wanted to share a secret. Chapter 1. Annabelle Doll's Secret. Annabelle looked around the dollhouse nursery, feeling restless. "Bobby," she said to her brother, "let's play tag." Bobby Doll was propped up in a corner by the stairway landing in the dollhouse. That was where Kate Palmer had left him before school that morning. "Do you think that's safe, Annabelle?" asked Bobby. "The captain is right outside." Annabelle didn't have a chance to answer his question. "No, it's not safe!" Mama Doll called from downstairs. Mama was standing on her head next to the piano, which was where Kate had left her that morning. It was a most uncomfortable position. "If you move around now, Kate might come home and see you, and Bobby's right, the captain is just outside." Annabelle looked out the side window of the dollhouse and saw the round yellow eye of a cat staring back at her. She sighed. Why couldn't the captain take a nap? Annabelle flopped on her bed. She tried to remember where Kate had left her that morning. It had been somewhere in the nursery. On her bed? Sitting on the floor playing with baby Betsy? Calling to Nanny from the doorway? Annabelle got to her feet again and peered through the window. The captain was still standing on the shelf on which the dollhouse sat, staring at the dolls. When he saw Annabelle, he licked his lips. Annabelle stuck her tongue out at him. "Scat!" she called in her tiny doll voice. "Annabelle, hush!" said Nanny. Annabelle couldn't see Nanny, but she pushed herself away from the window anyway. "This is so boring," she exclaimed. "My life is so boring." No one answered her. "Kate won't be home from school for ages," she went on. Silence. "I am going to die from the boredom," thought Annabelle. She flopped on her bed again. "Mama, can I ask you a question?" she called out. "Is it a quick question?" "I want to know how Auntie Sarah is related to us. Is she your sister, or is she Papa's, or is Uncle Doll your brother and—" "Annabelle, that is not a quick question," called Papa Doll from somewhere. And at that moment, Annabelle heard the Palmer's front door slam, heard Kate shout, "I'm home!" Heard feet clattering on the stairs. The feet were somewhere near the top of the staircase when Annabelle remembered just where Kate had left her that morning. In a flash, Annabelle scooted across the nursery and landed on Bobby's bed. By the time Kate ran into her room, Annabelle was propped up against the headboard, her legs sticking out in front of her, her painted eyes staring straight ahead. For the next 3 hours, while Kate did her 3rd grade homework, telephoned her friend Rachel, and tried to keep her little sister Nora out of her room, Annabelle sat on Bobby's bed and thought about her secret. Her secret was wonderful, and it was the only thing that prevented Annabelle from actually dying of boredom. Annabelle recalled the moment when she had made her discovery. It had been during a night when Kate had closed the front of the dollhouse before she had gone to bed. She rarely did this, and when she did, Annabelle was delighted. It meant that the dolls had plenty of privacy during their nighttime, the time when the humans slept and the doll family could move about their house. They could be a teeny bit less quiet, a teeny bit more free. Even the captain, who usually snoozed at the end of Kate's bed, couldn't harm them. And since they would have more freedom than usual on that night, Mama Doll had said, "How about a sing-along and then free time?" Yes! Annabelle had cried. Sing-alongs were always fun, and free time meant time when the dolls could go anywhere in their house and do anything they wanted to do, within reason. Remember, Papa often said, never do anything you can't undo by the time Kate wakes up in the morning. The dolls gathered around the piano in the parlor. Uncle Doll propped 2 songbooks in front of him. One was a book of hymns. It had come from England 100 years earlier with the dolls and the house and the furniture. The other book had been purchased by Mrs. Palmer, Kate's mother, when she was a young girl, and the dollhouse had been hers. On the cover of the book was a rainbow. Written across the yellow band of the rainbow were the words, "Great Hits of the 60s. "Let's sing Natural Woman," Annabelle had suggested. "Yuck," said Bobby. "Okay, then, respect," said Annabelle. "RESPECT," sang Bobby. "Suck it to me, suck it to me, suck it to me," Annabelle chimed in. "How about a quieter song," suggested Nanny. The dolls had sung song after song while Uncle Doll played the piano. Outside the dollhouse, Annabelle caught a glimpse of the captain. He sat silently on Kate's bed listening to the doll voices. He could barely hear them, but they were there all right. The dolls ended the sing-along after 2 choruses of Bringing in the Sheaves from the hymn book, and then their free time began. Annabelle knew exactly what she was going to do. She wanted to examine the books in the library, and she wanted to do it privately. Lately, Kate and Rachel had talked nothing but Nancy Drew and how she solved her mysteries. They had even read a couple of the mysteries aloud to each other, and Annabelle had listened intently. She wished she could be a detective like Nancy, and now she thought she might find something interesting on the dollhouse bookshelves. It was unlikely, but possible. Annabelle knew that most of the books on the shelves were not real. They were simply flat blocks painted bright colors with book titles written on one side in gold ink. But perhaps she might find a secret compartment in one of the shelves. Things like that were always happening to Nancy. So, in the glow of Kate's nightlight, Annabelle had begun her search. She started by removing the books from the shelves, one by one. Presently, she discovered that some of the books were attached to one another. She could remove a whole block of books at once. This was interesting, but not very mysterious. Then she discovered that some of the books were in fact real, like the songbooks. She could open their covers, and inside were a few pages with crowded writing, classics of modern poetry, Oliver Twist. Annabelle read the 20-page story about the little boy named Oliver with great interest. Eagerly, she pulled out every book from the shelves, but the others were pretend. She checked for secret compartments. Nothing. She stood on a stool and tackled the next shelf. Only pretend books. She stood on tiptoe and reached for the shelf above, and that was where she found Auntie Sarah's journal.